All right, it's that time. It's time for some honors pre-calc. So, um, I'm going to start with 3 factor problems just so that I can slow it down and see if you guys get it. If you're still struggling with factoring, I need you to come get help from me, Ms. Fisher, or Miss Marshall. All right. So I'm going to do 3. If you got factoring, some of you guys did grouping on your quiz. I really want to talk about the divide, reduce, and slide method, or just any factoring in general. We need to be able to do it. All right. So if you got factoring, you can skip this part. So the first problem I'm going to do is 5x squared minus 36x minus 32. Okay, so we are going to check for a GCF is always your first step of factoring. That is numero uno. And then there's not a GCF here because 5 is a prime number. So I'm going to multiply these 2 guys together. That's what I always do first. Whether you're doing not grouping or not grouping, you got to do this. So 5 times negative 32, that's going to give me negative 160. Okay. And then I need to figure out these. So it's negative 160, and it's got to give me negative 36 over here. So since it's negative, the only way I can get a negative number for this multiplication right here, this negative 160, is to multiply a positive times a negative. So that's where I'm getting, oh, okay, so that means I'm going to have to subtract. Because if something's positive and something's negative, you're going to have to subtract 2 numbers. Okay, and then that equals whatever's in the middle. Okay, equals negative 36. Okay, and 160 is real big, so a trick that you can go to is if you go to y equals on your calculator and you type in 160 divided by x. I don't ever put a negative in there. It's just, it doesn't make a difference. And then if I go, after I get in 160, so I'm going to type that in right now. I'm doing it as you should be doing it. Then hit second graph to see your table. Okay, so the first one should always say error because you can't divide by 0. So, and then you just scroll down. So it's 1 times 160, 2 times 80. 3 doesn't work because it says 3 and 53.33. That doesn't work. 4 times 40. Again, you don't have to write these all out, but I'm going to, I guess. No, I'm not, because that's my winner. 4 and 40 is the only way I can subtract to give me 36. Again, you can scroll down that list. So it would be 4 minus 40. Okay? Now, if I were to do the divide, reduce, and slide method. That's what I'm going to start with, okay? So if I do the divide, reduce, and slide method, I would write out x plus 4, because that's a positive 4, and I would write out x minus 40. And then all you have to remember with the divide, reduce, and slide method is to divide by whatever your A term is, your leading coefficient, after you take out the GCF. But I didn't have a GCF, so it doesn't matter. So it's 5. So I divide by 5. Because that's my A term, okay? And then I reduce it. Well, 4/5 does not reduce. So I would slide that out, and I would get 5x plus 4. This reduces. 40 divided by 5 is 8. Bam. Okay, that's how you would factor that. Not doing the quadratic formula. You can do synthetic division, but I'm not doing synthetic division like reteaching that. If you did grouping, all you have to do is, so I'm going to just draw this line to indicate. So the original problem, you still got to do A times C, you still got to do all the first stuff. So once you figured out 4 and 40, you would write 5x squared. And I try to group mine together, like I know 40 and 5 are common terms. So minus 40x plus 4x, because that's what gives me that guy, minus 32. Okay, so I'm splitting it up, and then I would group it. So what can I take out of here? A 5x. And I'm left with x minus 8. And what can I take out of here? I can take out a 4. Ooh. And I'm left with x minus 8. And then, bam. This is one of my parentheses, whatever I took out. So 5x plus 4. And then the other factor is the matching parentheses. One time. You only write it once. So then it's x minus 8. So we get the exact same answer. Woo woo. All right, let's do 2 more, and then we'll get into today's lesson. So number 2. I'm going, let's see, 6x squared minus 23x plus 21. All right, I really want you to pay attention to this problem because it's slightly different and it's really important, okay? So I'm going to still multiply a times c, especially with the divide, reduce, and slide. So a times c, 6 times 21 gives me 126. So it's a positive 126 too. And it's got to add, or it's got to give me the middle number 23. So I think to myself, okay, well, the only way to get a positive number with multiplying is straight positives or straight negatives. So 2 negatives and or 2 positives. When they're the same signs, you're always adding. So that's why I make that note. Okay, I'm adding to get negative 23. So I'm going to go to my y equals, and I'm going to type in 126 divided by x. I'm going to look at my table. So I'm just going to, instead of writing them all down, I'm just going to scroll through. 1 and 126 doesn't work. 2 and 63, I got to add, so I'm going to keep going down. 6 and, nope. 7 and 18. 9 and 14. That 9 times 14, so negative 9 plus negative 14. Because if I'm adding to get a negative, they got to have to be the same signs. And so now I'm going to set up my parentheses. So I have x minus 9 and x minus 14. And then we divide by that leading coefficient, which is 6. That's my a value. Always divide by the number in front. All right, now 6 does not go into 9 evenly. So, but it's called divide. So I did the divide part, and then the second word is reduce. Guys, I got to reduce this. Okay, that's what some of us were forgetting on our quiz. X, so 3 goes into both of those, so I would get 3 over 2. So I reduced by 3. Here, I would reduce by 2. If they didn't reduce, then you would slide it over. But if it does, that's what's going to get you this problem wrong. That's the tricky part about divide, reduce, and slide. That's how you can get it wrong, is if you forget the reducing part. And then I can slide out those denominators. So I got 2x minus 3. And I got 3x minus 7. Okay, now I'm going to, again, one more time, show grouping. So, with grouping, I'm going to rewrite my problem. So I'm going to split up my middle, 6x squared. And I'm going to show you it really doesn't make a difference. Minus 14x, like, I'm just going to put it, it doesn't matter the order. I would have probably put 9 with 6, but it, again, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to, here, when I'm grouping, I have to take out my GCF. So the thing that they have in common is an x, but they also have a 2. So I'm going to take out a 2 and an x. And I'm left with 3x minus 7. Now here's the tricky part. When I'm taking out here, since this first number right here is negative, I need to take out a negative because I need this to match. So in order for it to match, I have to take out a negative, and I'm going to take out 3. I don't know why I put 9. That was a mistake. So when I take out a negative 3, I get positive 3x. When I take out a negative 3 out of 21, I get minus 7. Looky there. My parentheses match. So that means that I did grouping correctly. I have 3x minus 7, and then the other parentheses is what you took out, 2x minus 3. All right, I think I said I was going to do 3 problems, but I lied because I feel like you got it. If you don't got it, please come to tutoring. Also, I have a practice factoring worksheet. If that's what you're struggling with, synthetic division, guys, we got to get those down, and it's easy to get down, but it's not easy if you're just sitting there hoping something's going to click. Like, that's not going to work. All right, so here we go. Let's start today's lesson. Should not take me super long. So you should get out your own notebook paper if you haven't done so already, which is kind of dumb of me to say, but it's okay. It's unit P, day 5, and I'm solving limits still, but this time we're solving it algebraically. Okay? Unit P, day 5, limits algebraically. All right, so we're going to start off with something. We're going to say sometimes you can just plug in the C value as long as the graph is continuous. All right, so what does that mean? First off, let's write this notation. If it says the limit as x approaches c is that random number that we used in the last notes, and then there's my function. So when I say continuous, that means usually there's not a square root, like an x being square root under the square root, or there's not a x in the denominator. So if it's just a regular function, you can just plug it in, and then that is what's going to give you your L value, your limit. So whatever you have here is what you would plug into f of x. Okay? All right, so let's see an example. So problem number 1, the limit as x approaches 2 for x squared minus 6x plus 11. Okay, that's a continuous graph. That's just a straight parabola, a quadratic. Okay, so instead of having a picture, I'm going and looking at my calculator, because sometimes this stuff is non-calculator. I'm going to just plug in the C value. If it produces a number, then that's your limit. Okay, so 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 11. Okay, and I'm going to solve that, and I end up getting 3. And that's my limit. So if I were to have plugged this in the calculator and looked at my table, you would see that at 2, it's approaching 3. It doesn't say error, it doesn't say none of that stuff. All right, let's do another problem. Question number 2. And I would highly suggest you write this down and you try it on your own. Pause me. So it's the limit as x is approaching negative 3. I have x cubed plus 14x squared plus 60x plus 75. Okay? So again, I would pause me right now and see if you can figure out what the limit is. Welcome back. All right, so you should have plugged in negative 3. That's my C. That's what we're approaching. So I'm going to plug in negative 3 into everything. Okay, so again, I'm just going to highlight. I put this is what I have put in all of my x's. Okay, so I'm going to type that into my calculator, and you should have got that it was negative 6. Yay. All right, but what happens if I can't just plug it in? And I call that plug and chug, so you might hear that a lot. So what happens if I can't plug in? So we're going to write that. What happens if I can't plug and chug? Okay, well, first, step 0 is what I call this, honestly. So I'm going to call this step 0. Check to see if C works. So that means plugging it in. I would always check to see if that works. So I would plug in my C value, see if that works. If it gives us something that doesn't work, what would that look like? Well, you would end up with like 0 in the denominator. So if you end up with 0 in the denominator, that means it doesn't work. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to do step 1, which is factor. Step number 2, cancel. We'll talk about what that means. And then plug in C. So I call this factor, cancel, plug in. Those are my 3 steps. Don't forget step 0, because if you don't have to factor, cancel, plug in, then you're wasting a lot of time. But sometimes you do. So let's see what that would look like if you did. Okay, so let's do an example. All right, step numero uno, or example 1, my bad. The limit as x approaches 3, and the problem is x squared minus x minus 6 all over x minus 3. All right, so I'm going to check step 0 by plugging in my C value. So if I plug in my C value, so that's 3 squared minus 3 minus 6 on the top. If I type that in my calculator, I get 0. Okay, that's not the issue. It's this right here, 3 minus 3. I also get 0. So I'm getting 0 over 0. Okay, so if you get 0 over 0, that means there's something going on. Okay, so that means I'm going to have to factor, cancel, plug in. That's not my limit. I haven't found the limit yet. Okay, so we're going to factor. Here we go. This is an easy factor problem. You're welcome. A is 1 times negative 6. I still do all that stuff. So factors of negative 6 that are going to subtract to give me the middle, which is negative 1. So there's only 2 factors, 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. Okay, so the way that I can get this is 1 minus 6 is not going to give me 1. So it's got to be 2 and 3. So it's going to be 2 minus 3. All right? All right, so now I have x plus 2 and x minus 3. My leading coefficient is 1, so the divide, reduce, and slide is going to make it all stay the same. Since I'm dividing, I'm reducing, and sliding by 1, that's not going to change my answer. This is the only time that happens. And then my denominator stays the same because it doesn't factor. How do I know it doesn't factor? Guys, you have to have something higher than an x, like an x squared or an x cubed. Okay, so now I cancel your common terms. That's what that means. So cancel, underneath cancel in my steps, I'm going to say cancel out common factors on the top and bottom. So that doesn't mean that if I had 2 x minus 3's on top and not the same one on the bottom, I wouldn't be able to just cancel those ones out on top. They have to be 1 goes with the top and 1 on the bottom. Okay, 1 for 1. I can't do 2 on the top with just 1 on the bottom. So once it cancels on the bottom, it's gone. Okay, so then I'm just left with, now I want to find, so I've canceled, I did step 2. The step 3 is plug. So I'm going to I always like to rewrite my limit. You don't have to. The limit as x approaches 3, but it's now just for x plus 2. Okay? So because that's what I have left. So if I plug in 3, I get 3 plus 2, which equals 5. So the limit of this blue problem, the original problem, is 5. Now, you could have also did it in your calculator, but if I say show work, and you say I did it in my calculator, you're not going to get full credit at all. Period, point blank. Okay? Cool. All right, next problem. Problem number 2. The limit as x approaches negative 2. And it's for the function negative x squared minus 4. That negative is not with just the x squared, it's the whole fraction. And x plus 2 on the bottom. Okay, so write that down. All right, step number 1. I got to plug in negative 2. Always check. Okay, negative 2 squared is, if I plug that in, that's 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. If I plug in negative 2 on the bottom, that's 0. Okay, well, I got to do my work now. Factor, cancel, plug in. The bottom still doesn't factor. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but the top does. This is our friend. It's a difference of squares. So when I factor this, I'm going to come underneath. Oh, I don't want to rewrite all of that. When I factor this on the top, I get x plus 2 and x minus 2. Now, I still have that negative out in front. I'm not going to forget it or you're going to get the answer wrong. Then I have x plus 2 on the bottom. So now I'm going to cancel out my common terms. The common terms are x plus 2 and x plus 2. Okay? So they're gone. Sorry about the announcement. Once I cancel, now I'm going to rewrite my limit. Again, don't have to do this, but I do like to show it. I still have that negative. So since there's a negative, I'm going to keep that factor in parentheses because it's being multiplied by a negative. All right? So once you factor, once you cancel, your very last step is plug in. Hopefully I say it enough that you're going to start saying it in your dreams. So I plug it in. I have a negative and then negative 2 minus 2. Okay, so negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4, but since I'm multiplying by a negative, my limit for this whole problem equals positive 4. That is the answer. That is the limit as x approaches negative 2 of that function. Cool? Cool. Let's get a little harder. I'm only going to do 3 more problems, and then we'll be done. All right, number 3. The limit as x approaches negative 3, x squared minus 9, and 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and see if you can do it. Okay? All right, welcome back, my friends. We should have did step numero uno. I'll plug that in. I'm not going to show all that again. But when you plug that in, guess what you get? 0 over 0. Is that always going to happen? No, but it's rare that it doesn't happen with this because then it would be too easy. All right, so I'm going to factor the top. Look at that. X squared's perfect. 9 is a perfect square. And we're subtracting difference of squares. All right, let's factor the bottom now. I'm going to do what I practiced at the beginning of this lesson, divide, reduce, and slide. So 2 times 3. Whew. Well, you guys don't have school. What? All right, so 2 times 3 is going to give me 6. So the factors of 6 that add to give me 7. All right, 1 and 6, and then 2 and 3. Well, guess what? 1 and 6. All right, so that denominator is going to change to x plus 1 and x. Oh, I didn't want to write that there yet. Erase that, because I forgot. Not forgot, but I don't want to make that all messy. So I have x plus 1 and x plus 6. So I have to divide, reduce, and slide by your a term, and that a term is 2. 1/2 does not reduce to anything, so I'm going to slide it out. So I have 2x plus 1. 6 over 2 reduces to 3. So I have x plus 3. And then I'm left with 2x plus 1 and x plus 3. Cool? Cool. All right. Now we factored, so now we have to cancel. This is canceled, just like school is canceled. This is canceled, and we are left with the limit as x is approaching x minus 3 and 2x plus 1. Okay, so then I'm going to plug in. We factored, we canceled, we plug in. So -3. -3 on the top is going to give me -6. -3 on the bottom is going to give me -5. So the final answer is 6 over 5. Oh, that was so beautiful. So, so beautiful. All right, 2 more, then we're done. One of them is real short. All right, number 4. The limit as x approaches -1, and here is my function. I'm not going to say it out loud. Just going to have an awkward pause. Whoa. All right. Pause me. See if you can answer this video for me. I want you to get it done. All right, welcome back. If you check C, you are done with this problem in like 2 seconds. So if I plug in C, -1, when I plug that into the top, I get 8. When I plug that into the bottom, I get 6. There is no 0. Okay, so that reduces to 4/3. Beautiful. Don't forget to check C. You might have been doing that problem for hours. All right, last one. The limit as x approaches -4, and I have x cubed plus 4x squared minus x minus 4 all over x squared plus 5x plus 4. All right, check C. Plug it in, plug it in, plug it in. Pause my video. Do it. Welcome back again. So again, check that C, that number. Okay, if I plug that in, unfortunately this time I did get 0 over 0. Doing the most. All right, so we are going to have to factor, cancel, plug in. Okay, so, but Miss Willis, how am I supposed to factor the top? That's going to be our new BFF, synthetic division. All right, I need you to go to y equals, and I want you to type in just the top part, x cubed plus 4x squared minus x minus 4. Okay, this part right here that I'm highlighting. Type that into y equals, and then I want you to go look at your graph, and I want you to tell me, the computer, where is this crossing the x-axis? All right. Hopefully you have an answer. It looks like it's crossing to me. I'm pretty sure it's crossing at -4. All right, so I'm going to come down here. That's what's going to go in my little synthetic box, -4. Now, if you just want to double check, go to your table and see, okay, when I'm at x equals -4, is it 0? If your answer is yes, then we're good to go. All right, so I'm going to put my coefficients. The first coefficient is 1, then I have 4, then I have -1, and then I have -4. I'm not missing anything. I have a cubed. Let me change. This right here, there's a 3. That's what I'm looking at. There's a squared, there's a linear term, and then there's a term that has a nothing. 3, 2, 1, none. Okay, it goes in order. If it didn't, if that x squared was missing, I would have put a 0. All right, drop it down. Multiply. Add. Multiply. Add. All right, now I am going to continue factoring. I just realized you could have also done this by grouping, but you know, doing the most. On your quiz, I noticed that a lot of people were forgetting this guy. So x plus 4 is also part of my factor. Then, since I have an x cubed on the top, sometimes it's helpful for kids to write it out, since I just go down 1. And then I have x and then my constant. So that would actually be written as x squared minus 1. And that to me is a red flag, because they're both perfect squares. Yes. So the top, I'm going to come over here. I have x plus 4. And this guy, it factors to x plus 1 and x minus 1. Because it's a difference of squares. All right, and then I just got to factor the bottom. And that's an easy one, so I'm not going to work that all the way out. It turns into x plus 4 and x plus 1. Now it's my favorite part. Cancel. Cancel this guy with this one in the bottom. Cancel the x plus 1s. And there's nothing else to cancel. So I am plugging into x minus 1. So I have -4 minus 1, which equals -5. Woo woo. All right, as always, it's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this long video. We'll see you when I see you. Bye.